and the advance of $1,100. Fair warning. Sold $1,100 to WL. Sold $1,300. Sold $4,000 to W. Sold $1,200. Sold $1,800 to the. Sold $1,900.
Sold for $1,700. Sold $3,200. Sold $2,750. Sold $7,500. Sold $4,500. Yes, $1,300. Sold $3,500. Sold $3,000. Sold $3,750. Sold $6,000. Sold $9,500. Sold $12,000. Sold $17,000. All in, all done at $19,000 for the 4 hot water plates. $19,000. Sold $12,000. Thank you, Mimi.
Sold $5,500.
Well, that was the sale. It did awfully well. And the reason I sort of covered this closely was that, well, one, it's sort of a personal thing, but I found out who the consigners were. Admittedly, I'm a little prejudiced. But also, it was an interesting auction for a lot of reasons I'm going to get into, and one of which it was very informative about the market and the state of the China trade art community, decorative arts, and where it all stands right now. And I want to go through some of the lots. I'm going to go through a bunch of the lots, and then I'm going to go back and sort of scroll through some of the things that caught my eye that I thought were interesting. Because, as many of you know, the China trade porcelain market has been sort of off for a number of years because of the shifts in taste in the American furniture market slowed down, and when American furniture and decorative arts in Europe and England, and when basically the brown furniture phase went away, interest in Chinese export porcelain among buyers slid because they weren't buying American furniture anymore, so they didn't need all the accessories that went along with it. And it seems that this sale pointed some significant strengths in that market that still underlie it. And I'm going to start with this: of course, the Order of Cincinnati tea bowl and saucer that had belonged to Benjamin Lincoln. Now, he was a very prominent figure. He was at Yorktown when the British surrendered with Washington. Extensive military history and all that. And here you have a cup and saucer. This is just a 5-inch saucer and a 3.5-inch cup, sold for $62,500. All right, that's it. And not a surprise. And we had talked about it in the preview, and we, I said that even though the estimate on this was the highest estimate in the sale, I felt pretty comfortable in saying it was going to get blown away, and it did. But I have to say the cup and saucer were in excellent condition, and I don't know who the buyer was. There has to have been a lot of institutional interest in this particular lot, and the other lot from Samuel Shaw that we'll talk about in a second. But it just a great rarity. They don't turn up very often, and the only time they do really turn up is either it's in a well-known established collection that was started in the last 20 or 20 years or so, or from collections like this that were built starting back in the 1970s. From the Gogosian brothers. They had great taste, and that was the one thing that was obvious through this whole sale. Even when you looked carefully at some of the, and we're going to look at them in a bit, the finer first half of the 19th century rose Mandarin and rose medallion and famille rose enamels. All right, but this was a great piece. And then over to this. I think, now, it's funny, this did well. It was estimated, the estimate doesn't mean anything because the estimate was just very low. It was just the auction house's way of saying it's all gonna sell. Don't you worry about it. And the sale did sell. And it is, as you saw just before this, when 100% of the auction sells, the old auction term used to be it was a white glove sale. And all it means is that nothing was left. Nothing was left. Take off the gloves and go home, and that's what it was. But this is a really interesting piece. And if you're a China trade collector and you were thinking of buying this, you probably should have tried your hardest because of who it belonged to, Samuel Shaw. And he was a prominent Revolutionary War figure. He was very well known. But I think more importantly, he was the captain of the first China trade ship ever to go to China from the United States, and that was the Empress of China out of New York City in the 1780s. And he was the supercargo on the ship, which basically meant he was in charge of all the buying and selling and trading that took place during that trip. In China, he was basically the businessman on the boat, because these ships were basically would go out like floating department stores, and the supercargo was the man that was in charge and responsible for what to buy, when to buy, and calculating weights and making sure they profited as much as possible. And even though the Empress of China didn't make a lot of money on its first trip, it was an icebreaker as far as trade goes, and that was what the owners had intended. The idea was to get the Empress of China to go to China and to encourage other ships to go, and they surely did. Within a couple of years, as many of you know, the China trade boom exploded out of Salem, Massachusetts, not New York. That's where the first ship went from, but Salem picked it up and ran with it and became a massive influence in the China trade. And of course, then you had the Perkinses and the Forbeses out of Boston, which were doing the same. All right, but this little Hercule sold for $18,750. A very good price. And then over to these. Here are some some sort of odds and end examples. There were some good buys like this. This is why when we talk about carpet bombing, it's my expression, carpet bombing an auction, is go through and leave bids on everything, because you don't know. And there are always pieces that slip through the cracks in a large sale. This auction had almost 500 lots in it. So you're going to always have one or two things that go very, very reasonably. This was one of them. It was a Armorial plates. One of them had the arms of Hurst impaling Lee, 1760. There were two of them. They were 6 1/4 and 5 inches in diameter, but they were historic. And somebody bought the lot for $260. That was a great buy. That was a really good buy. If you're interested in these things, and the thing to have always paid attention to in this sale was the condition and quality of the pieces. And when you look at the condition of these porcelains and the quality of the enameling, the lack of wear, this is what you're paying for. And this was a great buy. These plates look like they were in impeccable condition. All right, maybe one of you got the condition report and it had a restoration or something, but I couldn't see it. And it sold for $260. And then you had this, of course. This was a much finer Armorial teapot and stand. The arms of Brown, Viscount of Montague. There it is. And again, pristine condition. Pristine, beautiful shape, beautiful colors, no wear, gilding all intact. And this is what the two brothers, Van and Armin, were really into. They loved finding pieces in terrific condition. I know, because they bought from our shop on occasion. And I don't remember what they bought, but I know they did, because I remember seeing them. They used to come to the auctions we ran, and I'm sure there were a few pieces in here that we sold them. Some of the rose mandarin pieces, perhaps, that kind of thing. But this, we didn't sell this. This was a lovely Armorial teapot. I would remember it. And it sold for $4,375. The estimate, of course, was just $400 to $600. But as I said before, the auction house knew very well that they were worth more than that. It was just it's a strategy to get people interested, because they know they're not going to be fighting some consignor's reserves all day long. And then over to this spectacular set of platters. I really like this lot. This was a really nice lot. Vermeil Rose, Chidlung decorated, 1765. The biggest platter was 11 1/2 inches long, and it was really, really, really good. Arms of Garfoot plates, and again, very nice condition. Very, very nice condition. Somebody bought all three of them for $5,000. And then over to this Hammond Armorial plate with the sort of Rockefeller pattern on it. There were some Rockefeller pieces in here. They did very, very well. I've actually heard from somebody already who got a couple of Rockefeller bowls at a tag sale out, I think it was in California or someplace, and he's going to be selling them. But this was an Armorial example. It had a tiny bit of wear here, but this beautiful border with an armorial crest is a rare bird. This is a very unusual plate, and it went for $2,375. It was just barely, it wasn't quite 8 inches in diameter. It was a fairly small porcelain, but again, rare and beautiful. And then over to this. I thought this was a very, very good buy. I hope one of you got it. is this really nice arms of hay, circa 1815. This is an early 19th century, but very, very fine cut corner bowl with these beautiful dragons floating around the rim and the large crest in the center. And it was a very, very nice bowl. And somebody picked it up for $1,125 plus the premium. No, that includes the buyer's premium. $1,125 including the premium. So that was a good buy. That was a very reasonable trade. That was a very good value. And then this was that very cool the Arms of Sickman, this miniature side-handled pot. These are unbelievably rare, and it has the little squirrel on it, the gilding. It was all in great shape, and I thought this was terrific because it's a miniature version. The big ones are not all that rare. They're fairly rare, but the decoration on them can distinguish them. And this one had great decoration, had an armorial crest on it, and it was only 5.5 inches tall. They're very, very small. The normal ones are closer to 10, 12 inches. They get quite big. And this one sold for $5,625. And then over to this, these are really nice. Arms of Sichterman of Grogan, Yongchen period, beautiful gilding on them. And again, condition. And if you look at these, you can't find anything wrong with them, I don't think. In remarkable states of preservation. Love the pagodas that were added here. And there you have the squirrel decor on it, and ended up bringing $9,375 against a $1,500 to $2,500 estimate. But absolutely beautiful, and these were just 9 inches in diameter. These were not chargers. Had these been chargers, the prices would have been double to 2.5 times that amount for that quality. And then over to this, these are the Portuguese market armorial wares. Portuguese wares seem to be getting increased interest lately, and they were sort of in the doldrums for a while, and all of a sudden they're doing very, very well. And this was an interestingly decorated plate with these green sort of arrow devices running around with the armorial crest in the center and the bowl. It was in very nice condition all the way around, sold for $6,875. And the plate was just 9 inches, 9 3/4 in diameter. And the bowl was of a good size also. Really, really nifty lot. It's the only way I can say it. I love the color. I love that emerald green color, emerald green enamels. And then it's sort of filled in with gilt decorations and so forth. Beautiful quality. And hopping over here. Now, this was one of the most interesting areas of the auction because you don't see China trade wares for the Armenian market very often. And it's no surprise that the brothers collected Armenian wares because they were Armenian descent and they were extremely patriotic to their heritage and very interested in the Armenian genocide that conducted by the Turks against those people. It was, as everybody knows, their Holocaust. But there is not a lot of Armenian export ware around, and I was kind of curious to see how it would do, whether it would do very well or maybe not, because there's not a lot of other examples to get comps from and to figure out how much they're worth. Well, we found out the Armenian porcelain market and China trade is alive and healthy. It was the strongest overall segment of the sale outside of the Order of Cincinnati plates. They did extremely well. And here you have 4 Armenian tea bowls and a saucer, 3 bowls and a saucer, and the very classic decoration. For the late 18th, early 19th century, you see very similar patterns on export wares for America from this time. But these were quite daintily painted, I have to say, beautifully painted. And the interest in them was enormous. And they ended up selling these 3 little bowls, and the saucer sold for $11,875. And that wasn't the highest price for the Armenian export wares. We're going to see some others in a second. And then there was this very, very nice sugar bowl, and it was dated 1794 right there. And that makes it real interesting to collectors because it's absolutely dated, and it can be used as a guidepost for dating other ceramics of that period. Again, this beautiful, dainty, delicate, overglazed blue enamel borders, lots of gilding, and a little black to punctuate it. And those were the only colors on this, as far as I know. And this sold for $15,000. It was 5 inches in height. And then on to this Armenian market covered tureen dated 1833. Now that's critical because it's dated. And often these tureens are dated as being, a little earlier than that, 1820, 1815. And they did make them during that time, but they made them on after that. And this was a really good example. And it had some wear to the monogram on the lower section. The upper section where it's dated looks fine. A little wear down there, but wear doesn't seem to matter on these too much. I think that's how rare they are. And again, overglazed blue, overglazed gilt decoration, nice big finial on top, and ended up selling for $21,250. And if you're sitting there saying, when was the last time you saw a late Federal, early Empire period, as we refer to it, Chinese export tureen selling for $21,000? That's a big number, and that is because they are so rare. And those of you that are out there looking around, these Armenian pieces are something you really want to watch for. They do not turn up often, but when they do, highly desirable. All right, and this was another great lot. It was 4 Armenian hot water plates, also dated 1833, presumably from the same service as the one that we just looked at. There's the date on them. And these are just hot water plates. And as you know, the typical hot water plate from this period in famille rose or in this blue and gold decoration, they typically sell for somewhere today's market in the area of $400 to $600 a piece. Okay, these sold in the area of roughly $6,000 a piece. That shows you the ratio of value, how much more valuable they are. That tureen we just looked at, this tureen, if this was just a regular export tureen, without the date and without the Armenian heritage, it would probably have sold for around $600. All right. And then on to this. This was the real shocker, because I remember looking at this and I said, yeah, it's Armenian. Very simply decorated. Not a lot of decoration on it. It's got a monogram on it. It's got a lot of wear to had quite a bit of wear to the center. Not terrible, but it does have some wear. And it's very sparsely decorated. Very sparsely decorated. But again, rare. And it was a platter, which makes it interesting. And it wasn't an enormous platter. It wasn't 18 or 19 inches. It was just 14 inches. But it sold for $15,000. All right. So that was a real education, seeing how they did. Because if you look around, they're kind of hard to get prices on pieces from that area of the market, from Armenia. All right, now on to this, the pronk dish of the famille rose fisherman soup bowl. We've seen these before, and it did fine. It brought $2,815, beautifully decorated. This I thought was the nicest one. There were several of these fisher boy plates, as they're called. They were made during the sort of the end of the Yongchen period, into the Qianlong period, and these were, I think this one to me looked like the nicest of the three. The other two were awfully nice. They were in beautiful condition. What got me was the color palette on this was a bit rarer to me, it seemed, and it did very well. It brought $2,812, and I think one other brought $2,812 as well. So there was definite interest in these. When you get 3 pronk pieces in one sale, you find out. And then there was this. This is a dish that one of the fellows in the identification and inquiry program had mailed in something, and he was looking at something in a sale, and I showed him these, and I said, if you can buy these, buy these. These are great. Cornucopia plates, and the Chinese did do them based on designs sent to them by the West, by Americans and so forth. But this one is really vibrantly decorated, and there's a pair of them, and beautifully done. They weren't enormous. I think they were 9 or so inches in diameter, but they were, again, spectacular condition. The grisaille outlining to the gilding on the plate were in beautiful shape, and then these very, very almost sort of lush color palette. Beautiful quality, ended up selling for $6,875 for the pair. And again, they were estimated at $700 to $1,000, which of course was terribly low. And then on to this, a pair of famille rose Yongchen horse plates. And we've seen these before. These turn up in England. They're very, very popular. It's a very popular pattern. I love paintings of horses in Chinese porcelain and Chinese paintings and so forth. But what was really nice about these, they were in beautiful condition. The enamels were excellent. There's no chipping. That's white enamel on the horse in the middle. The gilding is in quite good shape. There's a tiny, tiny speck of wear on one corner of one of the flowers. I noticed that was about it. But the enameling itself hadn't been chipped. The rims look good. Everything about these look wonderful. And I guess a lot of people loved them because they ended up selling for $10,000, which we've seen before. But this was very, very nice. And you don't often see pairs of these turning up. And they were basically chargers. They were 12 3/4 inches in diameter, which again pushes the price. Once you get out of the 10 inch range, once you get over 12 inches, the value hops. And this was a good example of that. But again, quality, quality, quality. And then over to this, we had talked about this in the preview because, as many of you remember, there was a somewhat similar quality decorated blue and white plate that was on eBay a couple of years ago, and it had been broken and glued back together. And it wasn't Armorial. This one was Armorial, which helps a lot. And that one sold for around $3,500 or $3,000, as I recall. So I thought a couple of weeks ago that this would probably do awfully well because the quality of the decoration was excellent. And it was just an 11-inch plate. It was not a charger. And it did very well. It brought $5,312. And then over to this. I was surprised this didn't bring more. This is an extremely rare blue Fitzhugh style platter from the service of the Cabot and Perkins family in Boston, circa 1812. And the Cabots, of course, were the famous Boston family, the sailors, the navigators, the explorer Cabot, and the Perkinses were tied up with the Forbes family, involved with them in the China trade. And they were major China. The Perkinses are still around today. The descendants still live up here. Know a few of them. And this is an extremely rare platter. When you have both families, because they married. There was a lot of intermarriage among those families back then, and often for as much for business reasons as anything else, unfortunately. But this was a really, really fine platter with a spectacular spear border and the pagoda in the center, which is also seen on some of the early China trade pieces for the Crown and Shield family and so forth. And this was quite a thing. And it sold for $4,687. And this was a big platter. It was 17.5 inches. But because of its historic importance, I wouldn't have been at all surprised if this brought 8,000 or 10,000. Because there aren't many pieces in that service, and it is a combination of two major China trade Boston families who were phenomenally successful. Okay, now over here to this, the Rockefeller pattern pieces. I won't go through them all. They all did very, very well. But this one, we happened to talk about this one before the sale, and I think this was the highest lot of the Rockefeller pattern pieces. It ended up selling for $6,875 for all 4 pieces, and I don't think that was terrible. I don't think that was a big buy because we've seen in recent weeks that one platter of this type could sell for a couple of thousand. And to be able to buy 2 platters and 2 tureens in beautiful condition for under $7,000 or $8,000 is not cheap. It's a very solid, strong price, but it's a wild card item. You never know what they're going to bring. And these brought $6,875, which is a very strong price. And then over to this. I thought these were charming, and I think the price was very reasonable. They're not very big. These are 6-inch rose Mandarin dishes, but they're borderless, which is quite unusual. You don't see a lot of borderless rose Mandarin wares floating around, and the quality of the decoration and the condition of the plates were absolutely excellent. So for the collector, this was a really smart buy. I'm sure a collector bought it, or a dealer that has good collectors on their mailing list, because this was a very, very finely well painted with vibrant colors and in beautiful shape. And they went for $585, or about $290 a piece, which I think is perfectly reasonable. And then over to this rose Mandarin platter. If you're interested in rose Mandarin wares, really fine rose Mandarin wares of the first half of the 19th century, go through and save the images from this auction, because there were a whole bunch of them, and they were all with the Van and Arman. When they bought these, they were very, very picky, and this was sort of symbolic of the type of plates they would buy. Because there were lots of rose Mandarin plates around with different scenes on them. but they bought scenes that were atypical, which this one definitely is. It's sort of a battle scene between two guys in a boat. But look at the condition of the enamels. Absolutely superb. And that was the thing that always got them to buy it, was the condition. And again, you have this unusual center scene with instead of being a court scene or a terrace scene or something, you have people in boats. And these were really quite nice, I must say. And it was 11 inches in diameter, and it sold for $1,690. A wise buy. And then the rose Mandarin plate. I had mentioned last week, I had never seen this pattern before with the dragons coming up out of the sea in this manner. And then you have these very typical Mandarin figural landscape scenes running around the rim. The plate was made in the first half of the 19th century, but really well painted, with all these dragons coming up and going onto the shore with crashing waves on the rocks and so forth. And it's the same sort of rock pattern that you see across the bottom of Chinese robes, the skirts with the waves cresting in and breaking. It was a popular motif, but you don't see it often. You also see it on the bases of bronzes sometimes, but it's not a pattern you often see in porcelain. And a lot of people apparently liked it because it was a 1820s to 30s plate. It's 9 inches 10 3/4 in diameter, sold for $4,550. And then over to this was another nice piece, and again unusual. It was listed as a platter. It was just listed as a platter, I guess 12 inches long, but the decoration on it was terrific. There you have it. And this is not a layout you see very often, but again, that constant fine quality, beautiful enamels, good condition, and interesting scene, atypical scene. And this did very well also. It brought $5,000, and something you don't see all that often with a 12-inch Chinese export plate. And if you go back through the sale, check the silver prices. The silver prices were all quite good. I think the top lot was this, was it the mug? This leaching mug? I think it might have been, oh no, the platter, the two-handled tray. It was an English-style tray that was in the sale. And then the lacquer boxes did fine. I think one of the really good buys of the sale was this rare hardwood cylinder desk, China trade, late 18th century, really unusual form, cylinder top desks. There were a number of very, very good fans, including the one with the hongs on it. And they went for $2,000, $2,000 and $2,500, the ones with the hongs on them, which is not a crazy price. That's not a bad price for that. Those were quite nice. The reverse paintings on glass all did well, and then you have the Namchong attribution painting did very, very well. It sold for $13,750. So I guess it's not an attribution anymore. I think they had to say attributed because maybe it wasn't signed, but it looked like his work. There was a number of paintings by him in Karl Crossman's book on the China trade, I believe, if you want to see other examples. And then you have all the China trade watercolors on paper. And these were absolutely beautiful. And I still think they represent one of the best buys on the market today. When you can buy a beautiful circa 1800 painting like this one. Okay, it's a family, it's a watercolor. There's a reflection on here that looks like it's a stain. It's not. That was just the light hitting it. But this was a really lovely Chinese export painting. Absolutely beautiful. And looks like a pig bladder lamp hanging from the ceiling. And you have boys outside on this terrace, this sort of idyllic scene. Who wouldn't want to live there? And it went for it was 13 by 20 inches. The frame size was 20 by 23. The painting size was 13 by 18. They didn't say whether or not it was on Whatman paper. It could have been because it's a big sheet. Went for just $750, including buyer's premium. That was an excellent buy. That was a really, really good buy. And the few of the paintings in there, I think the paintings were among the as far as value goes, still remain one of the best values in Chinese decorative art today, especially export wares. You had this very nice scene of a tea port over the treaty port. They were processing tea, went for $1,000 and so forth. But always, how good is the painting? And all of these paintings were beautifully done. all beautifully done. Of course, the one by Nem Cheong brought the most money and so forth. But overall, this was a really terrific auction, and I'm so glad it did well because it was local, and as I've said before, the people that own this stuff were people I happen to have known, and I think that they knew Michael Grogan, of course, very well, and that's why they selected his company. Probably in their will or their family were aware of who they wishes would have been. So he sold it, and I have to say they did a smashingly good job with this auction. And this was a long sale because of the internet and electronic bidding and all that goes on with it. And when you have very fine quality, it ran a bit long. The auction was 485 lots, and it went on for 10 hours. It started at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and it finished at 8 o'clock last evening because I watched it throughout most of the day because I was really curious to see how a lot of these pieces would do, especially these Famille rosewares, and all of it was I think more than satisfactory from what I'm seeing. All right, this was another lot that caught my eye in the sale. It was this very nice terrine with the landscape scene on it. Very, very pretty with the matching platter. Let's see if we can get it to open here. Here we go. This 19th century, the length of the platter was 14 inches, but look at the decoration. Very unusual decoration. Beautiful, beautiful quality. And it matched. And somebody paid over $5,000 for this. It was $5,625. All right, but that's the way it goes. I mean, that's the way it goes. Fine quality things are worth it, and they tend to bring top money. You could find similarly decorated pieces that are worn and chipped and have issues, and they're worth $700. But when they're in this kind of condition, they do great. I hope some of you got some lots out of the sale. If you go through the prices, realize you'll see some values. I think were pretty good, very good deals. And other pieces, of course, were extremely strong to the heavy end of the collector market. But there won't be another sale like this for a while, especially dealers have sales like this when they're cleaning out inventory and things, or they're retiring from the business, as we've seen in recent years. But single owner sales like this kind are increasingly rare. And I know a number of you recognize that and took advantage of it, I hope. All right. That's it. We'll be back tomorrow with the regular weekly video, but I wanted to get this out because I was just so pleased with how this sale went, and I know many of you participated. I checked on Invaluable at one point yesterday, and they had 600 people watching the sale, and in the end, the sale ended up being bought. The entire sale was bought by 130 people. They told me they handed out 130 invoices, which is a very successful auction when you have that many bidders winning things. That's quite a number. Quite a number. All right. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with the weekly video. Have a great day. Bye-bye.